Hello cherubs, how are we all today? I hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome or welcome back to Trapped by Love. My name is Emma Carrington, and if you are interested in true crime and justice, you are in the right place. So I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button because we'd love to have you join us. By way of a disclaimer, we discuss true crime cases involving domestic abuse and domestic homicide on this channel. So if that's not the kind of content you are looking for, I completely understand. Thanks for stopping by. Just very quickly, if the content in this case raises any concerns for you regarding your own relationship or that of a loved one, please reach out for help. There's a list of resources in the show notes and the description box below. My aim in covering these cases is to honour the victims of these crimes and to get their stories out there in the hopes of warning others who may face similar situations. The hope is the more people who recognise the red flags and warning signs of abusive relationships, the less prevalent these cases will be in the future. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's case. Today we're going to be discussing the frightening murder of Lisa Bianco. This is a case that took place in the 1980s and was the catalyst for a great deal of change in the way domestic violence cases are handled. But as Lisa's mum has said, it's taken way too long for many of these changes to take effect. But let's start at the beginning. Let me introduce you to Lisa Bianco. Lisa was born around 1960. I couldn't find her exact date of birth, which really bothers me. Sorry, I'm already on a rant today. If you go back a certain number of years, it seems there's no record of the victim's details kept. It's all about the perpetrator. So very annoying. Sorry, moving on. Lisa met a man by the name of Alan Matheny, and he charmed the socks off her and her family alike. Millie Bianco, Lisa's mum, thought Alan was a wonderful man. And when Lisa and Alan married in 1977, she was happy that her daughter had found a handsome and charming husband. The couple settled into their life together in Mishawaka, Indiana, which is in St. Joseph County. However, Alan's facade slipped quickly, and it wasn't long before Lisa was living a nightmare. Of course, this was something she kept from her mum and the rest of her family, but it wasn't exactly a secret. Lisa was often seen with bruises. Alan didn't even try to hide the abuse he was inflicting on his wife. The couple had 2 little girls in the 8 years that they were married, but by 1985, Lisa had had enough and filed for divorce. Alan, of course, was not about to take this lying down, so he kidnapped the couple's 2 children and went on the run. He kept moving around, and it took law enforcement about 6 weeks to track him down. Lisa eventually agreed to not press charges if he would just bring the children back, and thankfully he did. However, after this episode, he returned to Indiana in 1987 and attacked Lisa. She was beaten terribly and realised if she didn't press charges, he was never going to stop.
I'm afraid that if he does get a hold of me again, I'm not going to be able to talk him out of it.
Lisa described the assault saying that it happened quickly, that Alan had unplugged the telephone, he pushed her down and ripped open her blouse. She explained that he came after her with several neckties. She said this is something that he'd done before, tried to strangle her with a tie. He then started hitting her, mostly to the back of her head with his fist. She then says that she told him that she didn't want to die, and he said he was doing it because he loved her. He then told her that he was going to rape her. She just submitted, knowing there was no point in trying to fight him off. So she pressed charges, and Alan denied everything. He says living with Lisa was a complete nightmare. He justified any mistreatment of her and blamed her for everything. This is quite common with abusers, of course. It falls under the minimising, denying and blaming sector of the power and control wheel. If you are interested in the other aspects of the wheel, I'll link a copy below. But the bottom line is these abusers will never take responsibility for anything they do. Nothing is ever their fault. They shift blame and deny. Despite this, he is convicted of battery of Lisa and for confinement of his daughters, but the rape charge was dropped. Now, whether this was because in the 80s you couldn't rape your wife, don't get me started, or if it was because Lisa had said that she had submitted, i.e. she did what she needed to do to survive, I don't know. But in any event, Alan received a sentence of 8 years, with 3 years suspended. Better than nothing, right? Well, kind of. This doesn't stop the abuse, because he is now just calling her from prison to abuse her constantly. These calls were all recorded, as we all know that prison calls are, but of course it was really nothing that correction officers were interested in. This guy was just harassing his victim and threatening her on a regular basis. Why would they do anything about that? Now, whether the prison were monitoring his calls is not really known. They should have been, though, because Lisa reported these calls to the police, who you'd think would do something, but apparently not, because it just continued. He apparently had repeatedly expressed a desire to kill Lisa and had even attempted to solicit others to do this for him. Lisa was tough, though. She wasn't about to let this creep keep her down. She began to build a new life for herself and her daughters. She attended a northern campus of Indiana University and became a counsellor for Elkhart County Women's Shelter, offering support to others who found themselves in a similar situation as she had in her marriage. Lisa's mum, Millie, said, "There's no one who knows a subject like a person who is involved in the experience." And it's true. Lived experience is so beneficial when working in the domestic violence sector. So Lisa did all she could for the women that she worked with. But even though Alan was behind bars, she was never completely at ease. She said it didn't matter what she did. She knew he would always find her. And she had thought about moving out of the area before he was released, but said if she started running, she knew she would never stop. Lisa said to one of the women at the shelter that Alan was still calling her from prison and threatening her life. She said, "If I'm killed, it's going to have to be a closed casket, because if he ever gets a hold of me, it's not going to be a pretty sight." That is so sad. Imagine going through life with that knowledge that this is a real and quite imminent possibility. Lisa got a call from Alan's mother and she let her know that he was eligible for a day pass, and she was calling just to give her a heads up. Number one, bravo, mum, thank you. Number two, what the freaking hell? What in the world is the prison system thinking? So armed with this information, Lisa called the prosecutor, Mike Barnes, and let him know. And he just said, no, I don't think so. And he contacted the prison and had the pass cancelled. He said, this can't happen. This man violently assaulted Lisa. He's still making threats. This is a safety issue for her. Apparently, the prison agreed to notify him, the prosecutor, Mike Barnes, if ever Alan is offered a day pass or furlough again, so he could notify Lisa. Lisa took it one step further and sent the prison a letter requesting that she be directly notified in the event of him being given any sort of furlough, and they agreed to that. On March 4th, 1989, Alan was in his second year of incarceration at the Pendleton, Indiana Correctional Industrial Complex. Wow, what a mouthful. And he was reportedly adjusting well and relating well to those he was locked up with. This is according to the corrections officers. A report in his file says he was a good candidate for regulated community assignments, that there is nothing showing that he can't get along well in society. Totally. I mean, except for the regular death threats to his ex, the kidnapping of his children, and fleeing police. That's a model citizen right there. Don't know why he's locked up in the first place. Fuckwits. Breathe. Anyway, in their infinite wisdom, they granted this man furlough from the state prison. He was apparently picked up by his mother. She must have gotten an earful after tipping Lisa off last time, because she doesn't call this time, and neither does anyone at the prison, despite assuring her they would. So Alan is released on an 8-hour furlough, apparently to go and see his attorney. Instead, he dropped his mum off, headed to a mate's place, got changed, borrowed a shotgun. Well, his buddy says he stole it, but not real sure how one sneaks a shotgun out undetected. But anyway, Alan then drove to Lisa's house. He parked 2 doors down in a car park and then made his way back to Lisa's home. He broke in through her back door. Alan's 10-year-old daughter was the first to notice that her father had entered the house, and she raced next door to beg the neighbour to call the police. Meanwhile, Alan chased Lisa through the house and out the front door. Lisa managed to do as she had advised so many of her clients at the shelter to do if they were in this situation, and that was to get outside and scream. However, Alan caught up with her and began to beat her with the butt of the shotgun. He struck her so hard that the butt of the gun shattered and broke into pieces. The neighbour Lisa's daughter had gone to for help witnessed this, and so did a number of other people in the street. Once he was satisfied with the carnage he'd inflicted, he got back into his mother's vehicle and left the area. He knew, however, that there were a multitude of witnesses, including both his daughters, so he did end up calling police and surrendering. When the police were arresting him, he said to the officer, "I assume that my ex-wife is dead." And unfortunately, he was right. Lisa was deceased. She could not survive the blunt force trauma he had delivered. Lisa's mum, Millie, says,
I received a call at my home from one of Lisa's neighbors who told me that Alan, her ex-husband, had gotten hold of her, and it was bad. Details of what happened were that he allegedly was going to see a lawyer in Indianapolis, and they believed him. Therein, he borrowed a shotgun from one of his friends and drove to Lisa's home and kicked in the door. She managed to do as she instructed her clients at the shelter: get out of the house, run and scream. And she did this. She just made it to a neighbor's door when he started swinging the shotgun, the butt, and bashed her head in with such force that the gun butt shattered. My knees went out from under me, and someone was picking me up and saying, "The girls need you." And those were her 2 daughters, who were 6 and 10 at the time. I said to a police officer, I said, "Where is Lisa? I'm her mother. I want to see her." He came over and he said, "Well, ma'am, he bashed her head in."
You have to wonder, how did this happen? Lisa had done all the right things. She left him, divorced him, she pressed charges. She asked for help from the police, the justice, and prison systems, and still it wasn't enough. The prosecutor seemed to be the only one to take her seriously. In fact, there's a letter in Alan's file in conjunction with his furlough report. It's written by a consultant to the state probation department. This letter says, brace yourselves, quote, "As for the rape charge, which was dropped, they very possibly could have been having a wonderful social affair with sex involved. Now the victim seems to be using the criminal justice system to whip her husband to death." End quote. So I guess with that sort of attitude, there's no surprise that the corrections department came out with every excuse under the sun when this whole furlough business went so completely and horribly wrong. They were as good as Alan at taking responsibility for their wrongdoing. So on the 7th of March 1989, there was a count of murder and a count of burglary filed against Alan. These counts were amended on the 20th of March to add a couple of aggravating circumstances so that the prosecution could make it a capital case and go for the death penalty. When the case went to court, Alan's defence was insanity. Alan claims he believed Lisa was having an affair with the prosecuting attorney, Mike Barnes, and that they were conspiring to keep him in jail. Firstly, they were not involved, and if they had been, that wouldn't have been called having an affair, numbnuts. That would be called your ex moving on. So he tried really hard with this because, well, there's no way you can say he didn't do it. The state has witnesses out the wazoo. I guess his public defender had to try something. Alan was examined and he was found to be competent to stand trial and was also found to have been sane at the time of the murder. Fancy that. The state asked for a change of venue. I'm not sure why, but it ended up that the defence didn't want to change venues, so they ended up having a change of judge instead. And this new judge is presented with a couple of motions from Alan himself, without his attorney's assistance. One of these requests was for a change of venue. Yep, he didn't want to change a venue in March, but come December, yeah, maybe a change of scenery, please. Basically, this guy was just throwing anything and everything out there to stall because he knows he does not have a leg to stand on. Finally, the change of venue is granted in January of 1990. Then his attorneys file a motion to no longer represent him. They are done, out of there. Don't blame you guys. But the new judge says no. He does appoint a lead counsel who is local to the new venue, though, so they got a new person to shove into the line of fire. The sequestered jury found Alan Matheny guilty of murder and unanimously recommended the death penalty. On the 28th of September 2005, Alan Matheny was executed. Lisa's horrific murder on March 4th, 1989 reverberated nationally and throughout the state, with media outlets reporting on the case. The then governor, Evan Bay, quickly reformed the state prison furlough system. So Lisa's death brought about much change in Indiana and the nation. There are now victim notification laws where victims are notified when the perpetrator is being released. October in the United States is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Lisa is the reason for the purple ribbon, the symbol representing domestic violence awareness. Purple was Lisa's favourite colour, and her family and friends tied purple ribbons throughout St. Joseph County as they mourned her tragic and violent death. So if you could pop a purple heart or a little note of reassurance that we will never forget Lisa in the comments below, that'd be great. My darlings, thank you for sticking with me. You are the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, and all of that. And I love you all so much. But that's all I've got for you today. I thank you again for joining me this week. Until next time, please take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. Bye.